Every year, millions of women struggle in their new or existing roles as mothers. No matter how much a woman wants to be a mother, the journey of motherhood can be scary and very challenging. And in a world that often diminishes the value of motherhood and the huge effort it requires, it's important to give mothers the support and credit they need and deserve. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. I have two great kiddos, aged 6 months and 3 years. My partner is helpful, but I'm stretched thin between working full-time, managing the household duties, and raising my little guys. My friends seem to have a much easier time. Compared to them, I feel like I've lost myself. Even basic sleep, self-care, and exercise are hard to come by. Do you have any good tips and resources for me? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Manly, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Manly, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Dayna M. Kurtz, licensed clinical social worker, who will be talking with us about her expertise in the realm of motherhood and her amazing book, Mother Matters. Welcome to the podcast, Dayna. It's such a joy to spend time with you.
Oh, likewise, Carla. It's really, really a pleasure for me to be here, and thanks so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. And before we started our podcast, I got to meet your beautiful son. So it's lovely to see that you are a woman who has walked this walk of motherhood. It's certainly a challenging one.
And still walking. My baby is 14 now, so I'm still very much on that journey.
Well, and it's interesting, as every mother tends to find out, we're never done being mothers, are we? No matter how old they are, we are still mom, and mother does matter.
Yes, yes. And our roles shift, and the ways in which we are called upon to mother shift, but it doesn't end, regardless of how old our child or children may be.
Absolutely. So before we launch into the listener's question of the day, which is it's a big question, a lot of facets to it. Could you share with our listeners a little bit about what makes you, you?
I can attempt that. It's actually a really profound question in general. What makes each of us who we are? I can speak to what sort of drew me to a desire to work with mothers and to women on what I call the motherhood spectrum, which is women who are considering becoming mothers, who may already be mothers, who have decided they don't want to be mothers, who are in complex relationship with their own mothers. So it's a wide-ranging category. And what really drew me to wanting to work with women on that spectrum is that when I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to have a child, and I should say that it was a privilege even to have that choice and to be able to decide whether or not it was something I wanted. When I ultimately decided that I did with my partner, I assumed that I would breeze into becoming a mother with great ease, because it appeared that I had every resource at my disposal to try and make that transition seamless. And in fact, I did have many resources at my disposal. I had a supportive partner. We were blessed to be financially secure. I had family close to me. I had a community around me. I had so many privileges and advantages. And even with all of those, I found that becoming a mother was among the greatest challenges I had ever experienced. And I think, and maybe it's sort of a nice segue back into the listener's question, one of the challenges I found is that it appeared as though I was the only person who was struggling with being a mother. Everywhere I looked, it appeared all of these other mothers were going about their lives with kind of a fancy-free attitude. They were completely, put together. Their babies or their children were completely put together. They had, Instagram evidence to support that. Actually, if I'm being honest, back then it was Facebook. It was pre-Instagram. So I'm dating myself. But I really felt isolated and alienated in the amount of difficulty I seemed to be having that was unique. And of course, I came to realize that it wasn't unique at all, that in some way, shape, or form, all of us have moments of struggle, some more prolonged, some shorter, some earlier in the motherhood experience, some later in the motherhood experience. But we all have moments of challenge and struggle on this journey. And I think, and this is part of why I wanted to be here with you today, I think the more we are in dialogue about that reality, the less of a burden we'll be carrying as individual women around being mothers and how hard it can be.
Thank you for that incredible honesty. And I love how you set the stage with, from the outside, it looked like you had everything you needed to make motherhood a breeze. You had good health, you had family, you had sufficient finances, that stability, everything. It should have been perfect. Yes and no. It's because life happens and kids are so their demands on our lives and society's demands on us to be doing everything as women. Even though we've come very far in the last 100 years, we haven't come nearly far enough in getting.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen, Carla. I just, we could talk about the politics of motherhood on that's another podcast episode for sure. And maybe we can circle back one day and do that. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that, as a quote unquote advanced nation, we are woefully behind in the way we support, or more specifically, don't support parents and mothers in particular. And I'm talking about things like no federally mandated paid maternity leave or paternity leave. I'm talking about universal daycare that isn't really universal, that isn't available in every town and city in the country. I'm talking about these more tacit expectations that women both maintain a career and also be available for drop-offs and pickups and being class parents and all of that. So we are called upon to do the hardest thing there is, which is to raise a human being to be happy and healthy and a contributing member of our society with so few resources and supports. It's a terrible irony. And we're all kind of set up to fall short.
Absolutely. And you're right, we could digress onto the politics and the unfairness of it and spend a lot of time there. So I'm with you. Let's weave it back to this question,
Yeah.
where clearly this woman is working full time, trying to manage, I can't, a 6-month-old, I think it's a 3-year-old. Partners sounds like the partner's somewhat helpful, but
Mm-hmm.
so depleted that the basics
Yeah.
of eating right, sleeping, exercise, the things that allow us to be our best at work, and certainly in the most important place, even though a lot of people don't see it as the most important place, but the most important place in my book
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
Is home, because if we
Mm-hmm.
don't have a loving and a safe home environment, we can have all the money in the bank, all the food in the fridge, all the vacations, but if home is not a loving, safe place, what do we have?
That's right. That's right. And I think, in listening to that listener's question, um, one of the pieces that stuck out to me and that resonated with me is the idea that that again, that somehow she was deficient in some way because she didn't feel as though she was doing whatever it was she was supposed to be doing, as well as all these other people around her seemed to be doing it. And there was this sort of idea in our culture, um, in the recent past, about women being able to have it all, kind of a part of the, women's lib. We can be in the workplace and we can be mothers if we choose to be mothers. And, at the risk of being a bit of a bubble burster, a bubble burster, we really can't. We can't have it all, or at least not at the same time. And I think the sooner we embrace that basic truth, that the way our culture, the way our society is set up now, we cannot have it all.
I am sad to say I agree with you on that. Been there, done
Mm-hmm.
that, and we can't be everything to everyone
Mm-hmm.
and also be something to ourselves. It's especially if you value the role of motherhood in and of itself, which I do. I think
Yeah.
it's one of the most extraordinary professions in the world. There are a lot of people who may disagree with me. That's okay. Disagree with me all you want, but I do believe that raising a child, as you said earlier, it's incredibly difficult. It takes a lot of attention, a lot of time, and especially if you're also a full-time breadwinner, being able to remember that journey, enjoy the journey of motherhood.
Yes.
It's almost impossible. So, and the other piece that you really drew attention to that I love, and it's that this individual who wrote in is looking at how easy, as you said, how easy everybody else has it, and you were saying, everybody's kids were put together and they were put together. And I point that out in my book, my first book, Joy from Fear, where I talk about that voice of toxic comparison. The minute
Mm.
we start comparing ourselves and our lives to what we see in snapshots, often very
Yeah.
carefully curated snapshots from other people's
Yes.
lives. The minute that voice of self-doubt starts creeping in, I am not enough, I'm not doing it good enough, my kids are not as whatever as this person, and my life isn't as pretty, as beautiful, as perfect. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to, talk about imperfect love so vociferously as I do, because
Yeah.
imperfect is life.
Mm-hmm.
We are imperfect. Life is imperfect. And anytime we're looking at these perfect images out there, and there are more and more of them, we're going to think that's reality, and it's not reality. Reality is imperfection.
Absolutely. And you use the word toxic in your book and in speaking now, and it's really spot on. This oversaturation of perfectly curated images on these social media platforms is toxic. And in my practice working with moms, this theme of I'm not good enough, I don't look good enough, I haven't lost the baby weight as quickly as she did, all of that kind of talk. Um, as a psychotherapist, I don't prescribe, and I don't just mean, pharmaceuticals. I'm not in the business of prescribing what people should do, but I do, I do sometimes strongly suggest that my clients put strong boundaries around how much social media they ingest,
Mm.
in a very concrete way. Sometimes I'll say, set a timer, 5 minutes scrolling through Instagram or on whatever, your drug of choice, Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, because they are drugs. They are designed
Mhm.
to, hook you in and keep you there. And I'll say, set a timer, because otherwise, as you so rightly pointed out, the effects can be very toxic.
Absolutely, and insidious, where it
Yes.
just creeps in. I've had so many clients tell me that once they go on a social media diet, that they feel better about themselves, or that they're
Mm-hmm.
being instead of choosing to follow the beach body bodies, whatever they are, that they choose to follow real people with real
Yeah.
lives. And I'm not a big social media person. You know, but there is one that
You're not
pops.
missing anything.
There's one when I go on to check my feed, because I have this one TikTok account that I have to oversee. And there's one that pops up, and I adore her because she is not a stick. She is a real woman with real curves, and she models all of these clothes the way they look on a real woman with real
Uh-huh.
curves. And I
Mm-hmm.
giggle but she pops up. I'm on it probably once a week, and I look and I just smile, because that to me is healthy. That is real. That is beautifully imperfect. And
Mm-hmm.
and images like that make us all feel normal, because
Yes,
we all share the truth of imperfection. And we can celebrate that and smile
that's
at it.
right.
And so for this mom to be able to say, well, maybe all of my friends look like they have it together, but A, likely they don't, because they're human. And
Mm-hmm.
B, why use your energy comparing yourself to these pictures or people or whatever they're driving or doing, and maybe just turn it back and use that energy to love yourself and your two little ones.
Yes, yes,
So in
absolutely.
your book, which I have a copy of course, Mother Matters, and it's such a beautiful, grounding, holistic guide. It's not La La Land. It's real.
Mm.
What are some of your favorite tips in that book that would speak to this listener's questions about it sounds like she's really suffering from some overwhelm,
Yeah.
a word I use carefully.
Yes, and a fairly widespread uh, experience, I think,
Mhm.
for women feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities, the obligations, the lack of time and resources, etc. And in my book, in Mother Matters, I offer up a list of tools, if you will, that are evidence-based. They're steeped in science, and most of them are free and easily accessible. And they are intended to bolster one's own health, holistic health, mind, body, spirit. And one, well, I mean, I'm partial to all of them because I selected each one for a specific reason or reasons. But I think in the case of this listener, the one that kind of bubbled to the top for me was the idea of being in community with like-minded women and finding a sense of support. And that could either be in the form of a, new moms group, which are often available, free of charge at the local rec center or what have you. And the reason that I would suggest that for her is because I think it might help to normalize the experience of how messy and imperfect motherhood can be. Because I suspect she would have her feelings and experiences mirrored back to her by other women in a similar situation. And that kind of normalization can work wonders against feeling isolated and alienated and alone. So that comes to mind as a useful resource for her. And, or, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a huge proponent of psychotherapy, of talk therapy as a healing modality. I obviously am a practitioner of it. I also am on the other side of it. I'm a client as well. And so I know of what I speak. And I think that psychotherapy or some sort of talk therapy can be really important for all of us, but particularly for mothers, because it is often, and I see this in my practice all the time, it is often the one setting, the one time during the week, the one environment in her whole life where the focus is solely on her and what she needs and what she wants and how she feels. And for typically 45 minutes, once a week, everything gets to be about her. And I just think that is an invaluable asset, really, for all of us.
Thank you so much. And for both of those, so coming back to the support group, I agree with you. And I love that you came right out of the gate with that one, because support groups, whether it's through your hospital, a lot of hospitals, a lot of pediatricians' offices, community centers, junior colleges, all of those sorts of resources. So try to find, often low cost or free.
Yes,
low cost or free.
Yes. Oh, and online too now.
And online.
Lots of support groups online. Yeah.
And a well-run support group, I think, in some ways, because I've run support groups before, and they can be incredible because there's nothing as validating, very different from individual therapy, but nothing as validating as sitting with a group of women, whether it's 8 women or 20 women or 5 women, and having other women nodding their heads and saying, yeah, I get that. I've been there. Or hearing a woman speak and the other person saying, I would have never had the courage to say that, but thank you for bringing that up. I finally heard someone else say what's been on my heart that I was too afraid. An incredible benefit that we often don't realize. And I've participated in support groups and have, and so been on both ends and thought, wow, it's amazing to sometimes just sit and soak up the wisdom and the frailty and the challenges that come, that just enrich, as you said, body, mind, spirit, because these groups don't just get us emotionally, they help us mentally, they help us, of course, everything that happens in the mind is going to affect the body, and you know, vice versa, that we really want to be able to see how important those support groups are, and to have a date with yourself and a date with these other women, that this is my hour or my hour and a half where I'm going to drive to this support group, and that'll take me 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So that's me time, and I'm going to be there for an hour, and that's me time. Or if it's by Zoom, as long as you're able to craft a safe enough space where you don't have, you know, kids walking over your shoulders and a cat on your head, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I may, a quick caveat to that is in terms of, you know, making sure you have a safe space to kind of really be in community with these groups. I would say too that not all support groups are created equal. And if you know, if one tries a group and you just don't feel it, don't give up on groups. Try another one. I'll just share my own experience. When I joined a new moms group when my son was a baby, the first group I joined, not for me, just wasn't for me. I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel understood. So I left and I tried a second one, and it changed my life. So, you know, keep at it if the first one doesn't fit.
Thank you. Now I have a question on the fit, no fit. I'm a big proponent, unless there's something that happens in a very toxic way on that first session, I'm a big proponent of giving a group 2 tries.
Yes.
Partly because that first one, if you've never done a group before, everything can seem awful and scary and not a good fit. Where sometimes when you go back that second or even third time, you've now relaxed, you can be a little more objective and sit. What do you think, to give it at least a second try, unless there's something?
It's an excellent point, and I'm really thank you for adding a caveat to my caveat. Yes, I think you know, unless it's just abominable the first time, I would give it another go. I say that about dating too to my clients who are, you know, unless the person's, you know, unless it's a total disaster, you know, give it a second go. That said, I do also believe in the power of the gut. And I think, you know, we really need to kind of trust our instincts as well. So if, you know, your instinct doesn't have a strong read, maybe give it a second or a third. And by then, you know, the gut usually knows what's happening. And I would check in with that.
And I think it's the same thing with individual psychotherapy. When you're meeting a new therapist, sometimes it's, nope, this isn't going to work. And other times it might take a session, especially if you haven't, if you're a newbie, right? It is that first time can be, I remember my first time in a support group and I was like, oh God, no, too many people, too many personalities. No. But I did go back and then I thought, okay, I might be able to do this. And then the third time it was easier. Not that it's always easy.
No.
It's not always easy being in a support group or individual therapy, because sometimes you're looking at things or needing to make changes, whether in your relationship dynamics or your skill set, that feel uncomfortable, that feel a little anxiety inducing. And that's the nature of change, isn't it? It's not always, even healthy change is not always comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's the nature of life. I think most things in life that are truly worth doing, including mothering, are not easy.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. The most difficult things in life are the ones that have the biggest payoff, if we're paying attention to them, if we're using them as growth opportunities. Otherwise, it's a challenge and we made it through the challenge to the other side, but we didn't grow and learn. And that's, I think, a really big piece of what you're offering to this listener, which is don't just make it through the mothering challenges. Make it through them with greater wisdom and ease, with a greater sense of what you want from motherhood, what you want to give, and how you want to parent your little boys, which is different from the old way of doing motherhood, which is just power through. Just power through. And then before you know it, the kids are 18, they're out of the house, and you're looking and saying, oh, what? They're gone. So wonderful, both excellent tips. Is there one more? One more. I know we've been talking for a long time, but one more thing you might offer to this sleep deprived, exercise deprived, self-care deprived woman.
Yes, everything changes. Nothing stays the same. And I wish someone had reminded me of that when I was where she was, sleep deprived, overwhelmed, feeling like I couldn't sort of get a handle on things. I wish someone had said, this will change. Nothing stays the same. Because I think if I knew that the situation was finite and that my feelings about the situation were finite and they would pass as feelings do, I would have been able to tolerate the discomfort with greater strength. But when we're in it, it can be so hard to have that perspective. We can lose it. So I would let her know it's going to pay. It may even have passed by the time she hears this. Who knows?
Absolutely. And I think the other part, when we put the tips together and realize, yes, these stages, these difficult stages pass. And when you're doing something to help them pass more easily, such as a support group, such as a visit to a psychotherapist where you get to vent for 45 minutes if that's what you want. You get to be heard and cared for and seen and validated. And that also helps those times pass and not seem so devastatingly
endless.
Endless. Absolutely. My goodness. Thank you, Dayna. I know you have so much more to offer. But listeners, you can find it in her beautiful, timeless book. It's such a timeless book. And again, very grounding. It's not foof. It's research backed. Evidence-based strategies for making that journey not only easier, but more enjoyable, more validating, and also validates womanhood. Womanhood. It validates being a mother. It validates the importance of raising yourself as you're raising little ones, because the two go together.
Speaking of being a mother, I hear my son at the door.
And here we go.
Okay.
Hello there. All right. So thank you. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Yes, we're going to go. Get yourself ready.
Okay. And off we go. So Dayna, as we draw to a close, where can our listeners find you?
So you can always reach me on my website, Dayna, that's DAYNAM, like Michelle, Kurtz, KURTZ, DaynaMKurtz.com. You can find information about Mother Matters, the book, there as well. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and you can get a hold of me there.
Well, thank you again so much for sharing your time, your heart, and your expertise with us today. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, Carla. It's really been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. And this, listeners, is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanly.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manly wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.